Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to be looking at Immanuel Kant, or perhaps I should say Immanuel Kant, because he was one of the most influential philosophers of the 18th century and continues to be one of the most influential philosophers even today. At the epistemological level, Kant wanted to combine, on the one hand, the realist philosophers, the continental philosophers, such as Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, and so on, with the empiricist philosophers such as Locke, Hume, and others, Bishop Berkeley, and so on. The main distinction between the two was whether reality was to be understood deductively by access to the mind, or whether it was to be understood empirically by observation of facts and inductively. The way that Kant reconciled these two major schools of philosophical thought were to suggest that while on the one hand the thing in itself, whatever lies outside of us, is being perceived by us, on the other hand it is only perceived by us through a series of intellectual lenses that we are born with. He called them a priori. He said these were a priori, such as, for example, our conception of space and our conception of time. We were born with these conceptions, and we can only understand the so-called objective world through the lens of the conceptions that we are born with. Hence, in this particular way, Kant wanted to combine both empiricism as well with continental realism. Whether this synthesis was successful or not is a separate matter, but it was nonetheless hugely influential. But we are not so much concerned with Kant's understanding of epistemology as we are concerned with his understanding of politics and of the Enlightenment in particular. Here again, he was very, very influential. His essay, What is Enlightenment, written in 1784, is arguably the defining essay that helps us understand how liberal philosophy in particular defined the Enlightenment. It wouldn't be wrong on my part to consider Kant as being a liberal. In fact, his views, not just with respect to his ethical theories, but even more importantly, his understanding of what constitutes freedom is so fundamental that you can see it continue right up to ideas in Jean-Paul Sartre. You can see it in existential philosophy. You can also see it in postmodernism. So Enlightenment is a particular period in European history where many ideas that were previously held to be sacrosanct came tumbling down and were challenged by the major thinkers in Europe at the time. And of course, the central ideas of Europe at the time had to do with religion, had to do with Catholicism, had to do with Christianity. Enlightenment thinkers then began to challenge many ideas that were held near and dear for over 1,000 years. They began to challenge them. More importantly, they had the freedom, the intellectual freedom at the time to challenge these ideas, and therefore they ended up creating a more scientific, rational understanding of how the world worked, and in politics they ended up creating republics and eventually democratic states. So the man that defines the Enlightenment for us is Immanuel Kant. He says, Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Man was immature, and now man has become mature. Man was childish in a certain sense, and now we have emerged from our childishness to understand, or to begin to understand, how the world really works. He says, we must have the courage to use our own understanding. That is the motto of the Enlightenment. अक्सर आपने सुना होगा कि आपके टीचर्स, वाइस चांसलर्स, लम्स के प्रोफेसर्स वगैरह आपको कहते होंगे कि the purpose of a LUMS education is that you should be able to think for yourself. This slogan has been used many times in academia, also of course in newspapers, and people who are democratic, of a democratic dispensation continue to say to you, think for yourself, think for yourself. Critical thinking is what we want to develop. Well, the slogan, they may or may not know this, but the slogan really comes from all the way back from the 18th century. It comes from Immanuel Kant, and it is a testament to his influence that it continues to be one of the main slogans that we still use, and I think it is more or less a slogan that we continue to use in academia today. He says laziness and cowardice were the characteristics of man before. Either we were too scared of thinking for ourselves, or we were too lazy to think for ourselves. We wanted somebody to give us a पक्की पकाई रोटी कि हमें बस बता दें सर कि आंसर क्या है और उसी को हम रिप्रोड्यूस करके फाइनल एग्जाम में हम उसको लिख देंगे और सारा मामला हल हो जाएगा. This is laziness. Either you really don't want to think for yourself because you're too concerned about things that are intellectually lazy. These are hard things to figure out. You just want to figure out कि अब शाम को पिज़्ज़ा खाना है तो उसमें पेपरोनी होना चाहिए या उसमें चिकन होना चाहिए, या अगर पिज़्ज़ा है तो वो पिज़्ज़ा हट से होना चाहिए या वो डोमिनो से होना चाहिए. To think about the larger questions of life. What kind of state should we have? What does it mean to be good? How should one be a good person, a good citizen, and so on and so forth. These kind of harder questions. How do we solve the economic problems of Pakistan? How do we enfranchise people in Pakistan? As soon as somebody begins to talk about it, you say, oh my God, please, yaar, bas karo. Let's turn on some Netflix and enjoy a nice movie, and so on. So that's just plain intellectual laziness. You don't really want to address the bigger questions. And the second is cowardice. What do we mean by cowardice? Well, quite simply that we are scared of asking many of these questions. Why are we scared? Because, हमारे अम्मी अबू ने हमें एक चीज़ सिखाई है, मौलवी साहब ने एक चीज़ सिखाई है, टीचर्स ने एक चीज़ सिखाई है, बचपन से हम एक चीज़ सुनते आ रहे हैं, नाना नानी दादा दादी ने एक चीज़ सिखाई है. अब अगर उस चीज़ को आप चैलेंज करेंगे तो सारी सोसाइटी आपको देखेगी और आपको कहेगी, हो हाय, ये क्या बात कर रहे हो तुम, ऐसे तो नहीं है, हमारे बाप दादा ने तो हमें ये सिखाया, हमारी सिविलाइजेशन, हमारी सोसाइटी तो इस तरह से सोचती है. Why are you thinking differently from everybody else? It's a scary idea to think differently. To think differently is actually much more scary and terrifying than to pretend like you're thinking differently. So, you wear slightly different clothes, or you wear your hair a slightly different way, etc. And you say, oh, look, I'm so different from everybody else. But are you really, in terms of the life that you lead, you're really fitting into are you really challenging, let's say, the division of labor, the way in which state and society works, the way in which we fundamentally think about the world? Are you really challenging that? Maybe you are, maybe you are not. But you can understand that it is difficult to challenge these fundamental ideas of any given society. Kant continues, our guardians have made us think that taking the step to maturity is very dangerous and also very difficult. They have made their people dumb and dependent on the guardians. So it is in my interest as your teacher perhaps, as a figure in authority, कि मैं आपसे ये कहूँ कि यार क्या इतनी सारी किताबें पढ़नी है, मैंने आपको नोट्स दे दिए हैं, इन नोट्स से पढ़ लो, जो मैंने आपको नोट्स दिए हैं उनको इम्तिहान में रिप्रोड्यूस कर लेना, उनका अच्छा ज़ोरदार किस्म का रट्टा लगा लो और आप इम्तिहान में पास हो जाओगे, मसला हल हो गया ना. तो it is easy for me as your intellectual guardian, it is simpler for me as your intellectual guardian to instill in you the ethic that you must basically just ratify or learn what I have taught you. Don't question it, don't challenge it. If you begin to question me, if you begin to challenge me, then not only do you have to work harder, the problem is I have to work harder now to be able to answer your questions. That's why ये जो बच्चा बैठा हुआ आगे क्या नाम है, मुझे विषय का नाम भूल जाता है, तस्वीम, सही कहा है मैंने? Wow, I'm feeling proud of myself. इसीलिए मैं चाहता हूँ ये लेट ही आए, क्लास में ना आए तो बेहतर है, because he keeps challenging me, and of course as your guardian that makes me work harder, and I don't want to work harder. I want to just come here, do my lecture and go home, and that would be the end of that. Maybe I am a bit lazy, maybe I can be a bit of a coward, because when you ask me the tough questions, I have to give you answers that may not even make you happy and may not make those who are sitting outside of this classroom very happy. So Kant tells us that both cowardice and laziness can cause us to look for easy answers. Only, he says, a few have succeeded in cultivating their minds and freeing themselves from immaturity. Most of us prefer to stay in this state of immaturity. There are a few people who break free, and of course, sadly, they also have to pay the price for breaking free. But it is this freedom, he says, that is the only way that we can achieve enlightenment. Nothing is required of you to gain this enlightenment except freedom. Nothing is needed from society except कि वो जो chains हैं, वो जो पाबंदियां लगाई गई हैं हमारे जहनों पर जो ताले लगाए गए, that mental slavery, उसको हटा दें, बाकी सारा काम आप ही हो जाना है, फिक्र ना करो तुसी. The freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. सबसे पहले तो आप एक society को ये इजाज़त दें कि वो रीज़न मंतक को इस्तेमाल कर सके तमाम मसाइल को हल करने के लिए. रीज़न हमारे मंतक की कुव्वत जो है वो सोसाइटी में एग्जिस्ट ज़रूर करती है, मगर उसकी हदूद मुकर्रर कर दी गई हैं. हमें ये बता दिया गया कि हाँ, इन सवालों पे आप मंतकी जवाब हम आपसे जो है चाहते हैं, मगर इन सवालों पे आपने रीज़न, रैशनलिज्म, लॉजिक को इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहा. इन सवालों पे आपको मैंने जवाब दे दिया है, इनका रटा लगा लो और बस यही जवाब है. When there is freedom, the few who can think for themselves will spread the spirit of rationality to everyone. अगर आज़ादी दे दी जाए तो जो चंद लोग वाकई मंतक को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, अपने जहन को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, लॉजिक को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, उनके ख्यालात खुद बहुत जो हैं वो सोसाइटी के अंदर फैल जाएंगे. वो ताकतवर ख्यालात हैं. मगर जो पाबंदियां लगाई गई हैं सोसाइटी पे, उन पाबंदियों के नतीजे में हम उन लॉजिकल आर्ग्यूमेंट्स को कबूल करने के लिए तैयार नहीं हैं, बिकॉज वी फियर द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस. अगर इसमें कोई आपको फिगर चाहिए पाकिस्तान में who is the champion of scientific rationality, reason and logic, it would be of course somebody like Pervez Hoodpoy, who has been talking about this for decades, that we need to be able to think rationally, and that is the only way in which we can create an enlightened Pakistan. Otherwise it's not possible. The public of course attains enlightenment or can attain enlightenment slowly. आहिस्ता आहिस्ता लोग जो हैं वो नई आर्ग्यूमेंट्स को कबूल करेंगे, but it is possible. Everywhere we see, and he's not just talking about Pakistan, he was talking about Europe at the time. He says we can see restrictions on freedom. Do not argue, they tell us. बहस नहीं होगी यहाँ पे, बल्कि कुछ खोखों पे तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर ये भी लिखा होता था कि यहाँ पे सियासी बहस करना मना है. होटलों पे और खोखों पे वगैरह पे लिखा होता था कि यहाँ पे सियासी बहस करना मना है. Do not argue, drill, says the officer. बस परेड करो, ड्रिल करो, सामने से चकते चक, खत्म हो गई बात. Do not argue, pay, says the taxman. आजकल नेशनल अकाउंटेबिलिटी ब्यूरो जो है वो सबके दर पे चढ़ा हुआ है, और उससे अगर आप ये पूछते हैं कि सर आपने सारा कानून चेंज करके ये बना दिया है कि जो अक्यूज्ड है, जिस पे इल्ज़ाम लगा कि उसने टैक्स चोरी की है, उसको साबित करना पड़ता है कि वो इनोसेंट है. यू आर गिल्टी टिल प्रूवन इनोसेंट रादर देन बीइंग इनोसेंट टिल प्रूवन गिल्टी, which is a normal way in which courts proceed. The normal way in which courts proceed is that it has to be established beyond a reasonable doubt that you have in fact stolen money from the government by not paying your taxes. But in the case of the National Accountability Bureau, the onus is on the accused. अगर आपको को खींच के लिया है नैब के अंदर, तो वो कहेगा कि I think, आपका क्या नाम है? Yes. आमना, आई थिंक यू आर लिविंग बियॉन्ड योर मीन्स. ये बैग जो आपने उठाया हुआ है, फ़ोन जो आपने रखा हुआ है, आई डोंट थिंक यू कैन अफोर्ड दिस इन योर इनकम. अब आओ और साबित करो कि वाकई आपके पास इतनी आमदनी है कि जो चीज़ें आपने ख़रीदी हुई हैं वो आप ख़रीद सकते हैं. सो द ओनस इज़ ऑन द अदर पार्टी. सो do not argue, pay, says the taxman. Of course, this can also be taken in the context of the famous slogan of the American Revolution. उनका क्या slogan था? No taxation without representation. अगर आप आपसे टैक्स वसूल कर रहे हैं तो फिर हमारी नुमाइंदगी भी होनी चाहिए, सियासत भी हम ही चलाएंगे. So finally, do not argue, believe, says the pastor. And हमारे यहाँ भी जो मजहबी पेशवा हैं वो भी यही कहते हैं कि बहस नहीं करें. कुछ वैसे आर वेरी डिफरेंट इन दिस रिगार्ड, बट अक्सर से अगर आप सवाल पूछ लेंगे तो शायद वो आपसे काफ़ी खफा हो जाएं. डिपेंड करता है सवाल भी क्या है. अगर आपको ऐसा सवाल पूछेंगे जो दीन के मज़हब के दायरे के अंदर है तो फिर तो वो मेरा ख्याल एतराज़ नहीं करेंगे। मगर अगर आप कोई ऐसा सवाल पूछेंगे जो कि वो जिसके हवाले से वो ये तसव्वुर करते हैं कि इसके नतीजे में इन किस्म के सवालात के नतीजे में आप दीन से अलहदा हो रहे हैं, तो फिर ज़ाहिरी बात है वो आपसे काफ़ी खफा भी होंगे। और इसकी तारीख़ भी है। और जहाँ तक ऑफ कोर्स कैथोलिक क्रिश्चियनिटी का ताल्लुक़ है तो वहाँ पे तो आपने देखा कि इंक्विजिशन वग़ैरह जैसे खौफनाक इदारे कायम किए गए इस मकसद के लिए कि लोग जो हैं वो दीन से ज़रा इधर उधर ना हों। What Kant wants in its place is the private and the public use of reason. What does that mean? Well, the private use of reason is employed for one's own ends. So private use means कि मुझे कुछ चीज़ चाहिए, maybe I want to make money, maybe I want fame and fortune, maybe I want to become associate professor, maybe I want X, Y, Z. What I will do is use reason for my private ends. These are private ends. These are not your ends, right? If I get rich, it has no impact on, well, it has no necessary impact on you. So it's for me that I'm doing this. So I can use reason for my private end. And generally we have seen that you are allowed to, even in the most constrictive of society, you are allowed to use reason for a private end. ये कोई इतना बड़ा मसला नहीं है कि अगर आप अपनी फैक्ट्री लगाते हैं तो उसको आप चलाना चाहते हैं, कोई रैशनल तरीके से अपना खोखा लगाते हैं, अपना करियर बनाना चाहते हैं, उसमें आप मंतक को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, रीज़न को इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, कोई भी आप पे इस पे एतराज़ नहीं करेगा। Also, this can be restricted without enraging enlightenment. For instance, in civic posts or in office, for instance, अगर आप एक हुकूमती एहलकार हैं, you are an officer of the law, then you have to implement the law. You cannot implement your private reason in that particular instance. So it can be restricted in your case. You can say, डॉक्टर साहब यहाँ पे आपकी एक जिम्मेदारी है, आपने यहाँ के बच्चों को पढ़ाना है वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल फ़िलासफ़ी, दूसरी चीज़ें अगर आप करना चाहें तो वो कर भी सकते हैं आप, मगर यूनिवर्सिटी ऑल्सो हैज़ अ राइट टू से कि सर सिलेबस जो तय की है, जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है बिटवीन यू एंड द स्टूडेंट्स, वो ज़रूर कंप्लीट करें, फिर अगर आप कुछ और करना चाहते हैं तो कर लें, प्रोवाइडेड इट स्टेज विद इन द एथिकल कोड्स set by LUMS, by the university, correct? Similarly, you know, if you're studying in a school and you take a physics class and somebody starts teaching you something about ethics, etc., you might, it might be a very important lesson, but of course the principal will be in their right to say, sir, पहले physics पढ़ा लें, फिर बाकी चीज़ें बाद में करें. So you can restrict the use of reason in public office. Even more importantly, I'll just come to you, even more importantly, if you're a police officer or if you're an officer of the law, in that particular instance, you may think that somebody is innocent or somebody is guilty. You may be absolutely convinced, but you have to follow the procedure of the law. You have to arrest them, you have to cut the FIR, you have to submit the FIR, all of these things have to be done. Even when you think this person is guilty as sin, you have to follow what's called due process of the law. In fact, agar due process follow nahi hua, in countries where the law is very, very strict, even a guilty person can be set free. Even somebody who is absolutely easily proven as being guilty can be set free if the due process of the law has not been followed. Their lawyers can argue that this was a mistrial, this was a situation in which due process was not followed. They can strike down evidence. They can say this evidence is not admissible in court because it was not acquired in the proper way through a due process, etc. This witness was coerced, etc., etc. They can blow that case apart if the law is not followed. Even though you as a private officer may feel कि इसको इधर ही सीधा कर दूँ, एक चमाटा मारूँ, इसका जो है ना इसको सबक यहीं पे सिखा दूँ, ठीक है ना? You may have seen the crime with your own eyes and you may feel कि यहीं पे इसको सज़ा मैं दे दूँ, मगर आप वहाँ पे सज़ा नहीं दे सकते. You have to follow the due process of the law. Yes.
I don't know if I understand this correctly, but would something like the pursuit of wealth
yes.
be a private use?
How is it private?
No, I'm saying would it be considered?
Yes, of course it would be a private end for an individual, but it would become a public end if you created a society which was based on the pursuit of wealth. So that becomes something different from the private pursuit of wealth to, let's say, a capitalist system, you know, or a neoliberal system. That now moves from the private into the public realm because it becomes a concern for everybody.
And what if, for example, like, so capitalist who exploits workers would say that my exploitation is a means to a private end, which is to gain our wealth.
Right.
But a worker who was to try to revolt to get more rights would be told that this is the public is of reason and it must be restricted.
It depends on what the demand is. So, for example, a group of capitalists or even an individual capitalist may ask the government to create certain labor laws, which are, let's say, allow for what we call flexible labor, right? Now, in that particular instance, the capitalist is arguing for the law to be changed, for labor laws to be changed. Now, he may be motivated in the first instance because his own factory is impacted by it, but when he is demanding that a law be changed, that of course is the public use of that is of course a public idea that impacts the public as a whole. So your motivation may be private, but what you're demanding is something that becomes a public concern, correct? Similarly, a worker may ask for labor laws to be more strict with respect to providing old age benefits and pensions and so on. Now they again may be motivated for a very private end, which is कि घर में चूल्हा नहीं जल रहा, बच्चे भूखे हैं. But of course when you argue the case that there should be an 8-hour workday, that is a public case to be made. It impacts all of society, not just you individually. So the public and private use of reason, or public and private ends, wherever private ends have an impact on people other than yourself, they of course become public ends. And wherever something only has an impact on you, and I can refer you back to John Stuart Mill, who was saying, as long as you're not harming anybody else, you can do what you like, right? And that's your freedom under a liberal idea. So as long as what you are trying to get to is not impacting anybody else in any negative or positive way, it's purely a private end, and you are allowed to use reason, but we can also restrict your reason. We can also restrict you in certain instances, especially if you are an officer of the law. But the public use of reason, yes?
Sir, for Kant, is the process of enlightenment inevitable, or does he set any precondition for it?
No, he is setting a precondition for it. The precondition for it is, of course, freedom. If you do not have intellectual freedom, then you cannot get to the Enlightenment. So you could be stuck in that situation for centuries, potentially. If the necessary freedom is not created, then you will never achieve an enlightened society. Or if the necessary conditions are created for freedom, you could achieve it very early on in history. It depends on the circumstances. There is no teleology as such in Kant about the achievement of enlightenment. So the officer on duty must obey, but a scholar should not be constrained from making comments about errors in military service. Oh Lord, ye kya keh diya usne? Or from placing them before the public for his judgment. The public use of reason, he's saying, includes scholarship. This is one of the most important things that we must allow, is for scholars, thinkers, intellectuals, philosophers to be able to exercise their scholarship in a manner which is able to criticize the powers that exist at the time. What's the point in criticizing powerless people? For example, if somebody is abhi maine ek video paste kiya of this woman who is sitting in between two railway cars, theek hai na? And she's holding her baby, and apparently she traveled 100 kilometers in between two railway cars. वो जो जगह नहीं होती जहाँ पे वो हुक लगे होते हैं, chains लगी होती हैं between two rail cars, वहाँ पे वो बैठी हुई थी, holding almost a newborn baby in her arms, और ऊपर से उसने हाथ पकड़ा हुआ so that she didn't fall off, and she went 100 kilometers that way to get her baby to a hospital. Now the thing is, if I criticize this woman is so powerless that she can't even find a seat on a train. She can't even get a ticket on the train. She's that powerless. So what's the point of utilizing my reason to criticize somebody who cannot even help their own child? They're so powerless. Obviously, to change society, to reform society, you have to point your fingers at those who take the decisions, the major decisions for society. And those are the people who are powerful. And those are the very people who don't want to be criticized, who don't want to be challenged, but without criticizing them, without challenging them, without looking at, the policies they've made and how those policies have impacted society, you can't really change society. So scholarship always has to basically, sort of focus on the major decisions, policies, structure of society, and therefore ends up in some way or the other, challenging those who are powerful. Or at least must be allowed to challenge those who are powerful, because otherwise it would be pretty useless. So maybe, he says, an appointed teacher cannot use his reason because they are appointed to teach a particular subject. But a cleric, as a scholar, must have unrestricted freedom. Scholars as a whole must have unrestricted freedom. That the spiritual guardians of the people should themselves be immature is an absurdity that would ensure the perpetuation of absurdities. मतलब जिन लोगों ने सोच विचार करके आपको एनलाइटेंड करना है, आपको क्या कहते हैं, सोई हुई नींद से जगाना है, खास तौर पे आपको, ठीक है ना जी, तो अगर वो खुद ही सो जाएं, आपने तो लोगों को जगाना था मैडम, अगर आप खुद ही सो जाएं तो that would be an absurdity that would cause the perpetuation of further absurdities. So the public use of reason is absolutely necessary for society to move forward. Can any oath or contract restrict the public use of reason? Such a contract, Kant says, whose intention is to preclude forever all further enlightenment of the human race, is absolutely null and void, even if it should be ratified by the supreme power, by parliaments, and by the most solemn peace treaties. ऐसा कोई मुआहदा काबिल कबूल नहीं है जो पूरी की पूरी इंसानियत को रात की तारीकी के अंदर डबो दे, समझे? तो ऐसा कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो है वो काबिल कबूल नहीं. इट वुड बी अ क्राइम अगेंस्ट ह्यूमन नेचर. इंसान की फितरत के खिलाफ एक जुर्म है. whose essential destiny lies in progress. तरक्की हमारा फरीज़ा है तो और हमारा हक है, हमारी डेस्टिनी, हमारी मंजिल है. Any individual may put off enlightenment temporarily for themselves. भाई आपने नहीं enlighten होना, ठीक है, सो जाओ, मुझे नहीं परवाह. But to renounce it forever or for other generations is to violate and trample man's divine rights underfoot. ये तो बहुत ही जुल्म और ज़्यादती होगी अगर आप स्कॉलरशिप पे, पब्लिक यूज़ ऑफ रीज़न पे पाबंदियाँ लगा दें. तो आप ये बेसिकली कह रहे हैं कि इंसानी तरक्की पे आप पाबंदियाँ लगा रहे हैं. इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि हर बंदा जो तनकीद कर रहा है वो दुरुस्त तनकीद कर रहा है, मगर इसका ये मतलब ज़रूर है कि उस तनकीद के बगैर, उस पब्लिक स्कॉलरशिप के बगैर, जो किसी ज़माने के किसी वक्त के अंदर जो ताकतवर कुव्वतें हैं उनको चैलेंज किए बगैर हम, या जो पॉलिसीज़ हैं उनको चैलेंज किए बगैर समाज तरक्की नहीं कर सकता. Do we live in an enlightened age, he asks? No, we don't. But we do live in an age of enlightenment. We are moving. अभी हमने enlightenment हासिल नहीं की, मगर हम उसकी तरफ सफ़र ज़रूर कर रहे हैं, हम उसकी तरफ बढ़ ज़रूर रहे हैं. A leader who allows men complete freedom in religious matters is himself enlightened and deserves to be praised. ऐसी क़यादत जो कहे कि ठीक है, तनकीद करो, मैं कबूल करता हूँ, मैं इत्तफाक नहीं करूँगा आपसे, ज़रूरी नहीं कि मैं इत्तफाक करूँ, मगर मैं आपका हक़ नहीं छीनूँगा कि आप मुझ पे तनकीद करें. और ऐसे कायद को जो है हमें, we should praise such a ruler. Only a ruler who is not afraid of his own shadow can say, argue as much as you want and about what you want, but obey. जब कानून बन जाए तो फिर आपने उस पर आप बहस ज़रूर कर सकते हैं, मगर कानून तोड़ नहीं सकते आप. ठीक है, आप ये ज़रूर कह सकते हैं कि ये कानून दुरुस्त नहीं है, मगर जब तक कानून कायम है उस वक्त तक आपने कानून की पासदारी भी करनी है, आपने कानून को ओबे भी करना है. बट देन यू कैन आर्ग्यू द केस दैट दिस लॉ फॉर एग्जांपल इज डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी अगेंस्ट वुमेन, और इट इज डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी अगेंस्ट African Americans, or against religious minorities, or against workers, etc., and it ought to be changed. That freedom should be there. So freedom and the dignity of man are absolutely connected. Without freedom, man cannot lead a life of real dignity. Governments and the powers that be will always profit by treating men who are now more than machines in accordance with their dignity. इंसान को अगर डिग्निटी से ट्रीट किया जाए, उसके ओपिनियन की रिस्पेक्ट की जाए, उसके डिफरेंस ऑफ ओपिनियन की रिस्पेक्ट की जाए, ऐसी हुकूमतें जो हैं वो मज़ीद ज़्यादा ताकतवर हो सकती हैं, क्योंकि ऐसी हुकूमतें ऐसी सोसाइटीज़ पैदा करती हैं that are able to think for themselves, that are able to reason for themselves, and that are able to progress as a result of the use of reason. This here is a coin that was made commemorating the 250th birthday of Immanuel Kant. That ends my lecture on the Enlightenment. Any questions so far? सब क्लियर हो गए हैं? समझ आ गई Enlightenment क्या है? कोई तो सवाल हो? Yes.
So, sir, when Kant says that a worker of an office should not be disobeying the rule of law, should not be disobeying the public reason, but then he says that any attempt to trample over the public reason should also be, should not be allowed. So, doesn't he then create a distinction between the worker class and the scholarly class?
That distinction exists not just in the time of Immanuel Kant, but exists in our society even today. There is a distinction between those who earn their living by intellectual labor versus those who earn their living by manual labor. That's not a distinction that exists as a consequence of our conceptions. It's a distinction that exists as a consequence of the way in which the economy operates. So just to say, okay, I don't consider any distinction between intellectual and manual labor will not make the actual existence of the division of mental and manual labor go away. Just because you refuse to acknowledge it doesn't mean it goes away, right? This is a very important argument, because we often think that this distinction exists because they are mere conceptions in our mind, and if we knock them out of our mind, then they'll be knocked out of society. For example, we'll often think that if we knock out racist ideas or sexist ideas from our mind, then sexism will collapse, racism will collapse, because intellectually we won't be supporting racist ideas, or intellectually we won't be supporting sexist ideas. But does patriarchy collapse merely because you stop thinking in a patriarchal way? Do you think it collapses? Or is its power rooted in the economy? Is its power rooted in the position and status that women occupy, not only because I think of women in a certain way, but rather the other way. It is already because women are powerless that I can think of them as powerless. So try and understand before you ask another question. Is it that women are powerless because men think of them as powerless? Or is it that men think of them as powerless because in reality women are powerless? Because the two have very different consequences as an activist, right? As an activist, if you think women are powerless in reality in the economic sphere, then like Virginia Woolf, you would say that in order for women to have freedom, the precondition of that would be economic independence. If women have economic independence, then they would become, as many men do, if they have that real economic independence, they're not dependent on other men for their livelihood, then they would automatically become more powerful. That's one argument. That's one branch of feminist activism, right? Or Marxist or socialist feminist activism goes along that way. There's another branch which says, no, that's, yes, of course we want economic empowerment, but the real focus ought to be on conceptions of that men, certain conceptions, patriarchal conceptions about women. And they may be conceptions that men have, they obviously benefit men, but they may also be conceptions that women have that don't benefit women. Right? Women may hold conceptions that hurt themselves. People can often hold conceptions that hurt themselves. Right? In which instance, we focus all our energy on challenging those conceptions. But maybe we don't really focus too much energy on economically empower women. Right? The two have very different consequences. So which is it? Is it that women were economically weak, as a consequence of which all these conceptions about their weakness in other spheres of life are the product of that real economic division of labor, where women are basically wives are domestic servants? If that is the division of labor, then we would see conceptions arise on the basis of that. Or is it the other thing? Is it that they became weak because we had certain conceptions of them and that reduced them to domestic slaves? For example, with African slavery, is it that, or rather racism, is it that some people went and took 12, 13 million black people, slaves from the African continent, and use them on plantation colonies, etc., that gave rise to the conceptions of racism as justifications for that particular action? Or is it that racism is merely a mental construct? Of course, it is a mental construct, there's no doubt about it, it is a social construct. But if we just get rid of the social construct, the mental construct, and we think of black and white people as being, equal, etc., but we don't undo that old division of labor which rendered African American people at the lowest rungs of society as mainly the working people of that country. If we don't undo that division of labor, do you expect that racism will disappear? So Kant is not creating, in defense of Kant, I would say, Kant is not creating the distinction between mental and manual labor. He is merely observing that that distinction already exists. What he is further saying is that those who are scholars, those who are thinkers, those who are philosophers, those who have spent all the decades of their life trying to understand how the state works, how society works, how the economy works, how politics works, how ethics works, how have studied sociology, have studied all these matters between men and women, between workers and capitalists and slaves and plantation owners, and looked at the history of Pakistan, etc., 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 etc. If now you tell them कि हाँ जी रिसर्च जरूर करें, मगर उसमें से नतीजा ये निकलना चाहिए कि मिलिट्री का बजट बढ़ा दिया जाए, या रिसर्च जरूर करें मगर उसमें से नतीजा यही निकलना चाहिए कि इस काउंसिल ऑफ इस्लामिक आइडियोलॉजी जो है वो ही कानून बनाए, ठीक है, रिसर्च जरूर करें मगर उसमें से नतीजा यही निकलना चाहिए कि PMLN, PTI या पीपल्स पार्टी की हुकूमत बने। जो भी वो आप उसको कहें, जिस भी डब्बे के अंदर आप उसको फिट करना चाहें, अच्छा हो या बुरा हो, ये अलग बहस है, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि ये बुरा है अच्छा है, अच्छा हो या बुरा हो, पहले से ही अगर आप पाबंद कर दें अपनी इंटेलेक्चुअल क्लास को कि ये नतीजा निकालना है, फिर मैं आपको ये फंडिंग दूंगा, तो मेरा ख्याल है कि what Kant is trying to say is that you are basically not allowing the scholars of your society, या फिर आप उसको डंडे के जोर से कहें कि अगर इससे कोई और नतीजा निकाला तो तुम मिसिंग हो जाओगे, ठीक है ना। तो अगर आप पाबंद कर दें अपनी इंटेलेक्चुअल्स को कि भाई ये चीज़ें आप सोच सकते हैं, वो चीज़ें आप नहीं सोच सकते, चाहे वो खौफ के ज़रिए हो या वो लालच के ज़रिए हो, तो फिर आप अपनी ही सोसाइटी को डिनाई कर रहे हैं वो अपॉर्चुनिटी कि वो सोसाइटी जो है उनकी स्कॉलरशिप और उनकी रिसर्च से और उनकी इंटेलेक्ट से और उनके काम से बेनिफिट कर सके। हो सकता है कि आप इंडिविजुअली बेनिफिट नहीं करेंगे, इसीलिए शायद आप उसको मना कर रहे हैं, मगर सोसाइटी बेनिफिट करेगी। और अगर आप वसील कल्बी से थोड़ा सा इस पर गौर करें, ब्रॉड माइंडेड होकर जरा गौर करें, अगर सोसाइटी बेनिफिट करेगी तो भाईजान फिर आप भी बेनिफिट करेंगे, ठीक है ना। फौरी तौर पे शायद नहीं आप बेनिफिट करें, मगर लॉन्ग टर्म में आपको भी बेनिफिट होगा उसका। दैट्स व्हाट कांट इज ट्राइंग टू से, that a society as a whole benefits from allowing its thinkers the freedom to use reason for public ends. If you allow that, then society will progress. Yes.
How is Kant saying that those individuals will benefit? Because if I have that money and my interest lies in maintaining the status quo, I wouldn't want to invest in research that would try to dismantle that.
Sure. Actually, Kant didn't say that. I kind of supplemented him by saying that. But I think one can understand and accept. I mean, he does say, for example, a government will profit by treating men who are now more than machines in accord with their dignity. So that's the argument I'm supplementing. That when a society becomes stronger, maybe I will lose temporarily for 5-10 years. But as a consequence of changing certain economic policies, the whole of society becomes incredibly prosperous, then I will also get a share of that prosperity, will I not? My children will enjoy a safer society, a cleaner society, a better society, a more advanced society. For just take as an instance that you may be the top dog in a third world country, but being the top dog in a third world country, certainly you rule over a lot of people, etc. But you are the top dog of a very poor country. You may not be the top dog in a rich country, but you can understand that in an advanced country, if you're upper middle class, you can enjoy a life which is far more enriching than even rulers can enjoy in a very desperately poor country. So you do benefit from that, from that way. Maybe not in the short run, but in the long run. So that's the kind of argument that Kant is making. That in fact all of society, we have to think more about all of society moving together. To paraphrase or to use a quotation by John F. Kennedy, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So if society as a whole improves, prospers, benefits, becomes more enlightened, all boats will rise up, including yours. But if you make it such that that policies are benefiting one section of society at the expense of the overall growth and development of society, then that's not a very enlightened way to run a society. That, I think, is Kant's argument. Yes.
Isn't he saying that when you are in the system, just follow it, but it doesn't preclude you from criticizing it?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. He is not calling upon you to break the law and take the law into your own hands and so on. But he is merely calling upon the powers that be in his time to give society and its thinkers the right to rethink the law, to think about it and to the right to challenge it, to the right to be able to come up with better laws. And I think that's a pretty, I think that's a reasonable argument. And of course, we can think of certain laws in this country. There are certain laws in this country that protect other laws in this country from being challenged intellectually, right? So there are laws that protect other laws. There are laws about certain things, right? Challenging certain ideas, challenging certain laws, and then there are laws about anybody trying to challenge those ideas or those laws. You understand what I'm saying? And so Kant is saying we have to allow the freedom to be able to debate these things.